I say I always knew I was a girl as a defense against the louder world that tells me that who I am and who I believe myself to be is wrong and incorrect and should be remain silent. And so I feel like I've always known I was me. My mom loves to say that very young, I was very adamant about my identity, about the things that I wanted to do, how I wanted to express myself as a very feminine child. And I know that in a culture that demeans and devalues femininity, it's oftentimes difficult for parents who are dealing with children, right, to just let them kind of explore and find who they are. But I was one of those kids that had a very affirming family, so I could kind of do that.
But there were still those moments where the affirmation wasn't there.
Yeah, when my dad would side eye and he would
Right.
be like, "Boy, you need to
Right.
cut that out." And you know, my father is a Southern man, you know, Baptist from Dallas, Texas, you know, with roots in Louisiana. And so my father, who was in the Navy when I was a child, was very much vocal about like his son not acting like a sissy,
Right.
you know? And I talk about how that was one of the first like labels I remember about myself was sissy.
Right.
And then how it then numbed me to greater words that came on, sharper words that were thrown against my body. And I think that my father, that was his way of caring, was through gender policing, which then taught me that who I was wrong, and I internalized a lot of that stuff. But luckily, I kind of unpacked that throughout my life.
How did you find the space to resist that kind of gender policing? Because you transitioned relatively early, relatively young. Mm-hmm. How were you able to do that despite the fact that the broader world and your immediate family was saying, no, be who you're supposed to be a boy?
I think it was a bunch of compromises. I think sometimes, like, you know, I would do something, my father would catch me, and then I would, you know, kind of backpedal a little bit and try to like butch up a little bit. Yeah. And then I would like try it again. So like I remember in the second grade, I told my teacher I wanted to be a secretary. Right, and then she wrote a note to my father about my femininity and all of this stuff. And my father then policed me and gave me this lecture about what boys do, what girls do, blah, blah, blah. And so then I went back in, and then I came back out and started playing house with my friends secretly. And then he found out about that. Then I'd go back. So this really tragic dance in a way, like full of like stops and starts. And I think that my girlhood, the composite of it was a bunch of these little bitty moments that I kind of stole for myself. I would call myself Keisha and would flirt with boys and do all these little things and like flirt over the phone and then wear barrettes. And then when I was out with my girlfriends, I would like wear my hair down and all of these little bitty things. That it was kind of just a composite of all of that stuff.
How does your family respond to this as you're navigating these communities and these spaces?
Well, luckily I was with my mother.
Right.
And so she was a lot more sensitive, a lot more caring and affirming. She listened to me. She let me lead the way on a lot of these things. My father was absent. He was in Dallas, and so we had a more of a long distance relationship, and he didn't have the funds to kind of come and check up on me or anything like that. Right. So a lot of it was hidden from his
Fight
ass.
for the best.
Yes. A lot of it was hidden, and then I wrote him this really adamant letter when I was I think I was 15 years old, and I told him, like, this is my name is Janet, I go by she and her pronouns, I need you to, you know, address me in this way, or I can't talk to you anymore, at least until you can come around to that. And my father wrote me this really beautiful letter, which I do have it in the book, where he tells me that no matter what decisions I make, he'll always love me.
Right.
And I am the child and he is the father, and his job is to just love me, and knowing that no matter what, he's there for me. And having that kind
That shocked me, by the way.
Yeah.
When I read it, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I expected the exact opposite. I expected the story of being shunned, of being marginalized, of being erased, you know, from family.
And my father is one of my biggest advocates in his own life, right? He still lives in a very predominantly Black community that sometimes hasn't been outreached and told and taught about these issues, right? And so he's having to do a lot of that work on his own, within his own community, saying to, you know, some of my uncles who are like, why are you calling your son Janet? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And he's like, this is my baby.
Right.
You know, this is not any of your business, you know? And he's just that's just how my father is. And if you really tap into the character of who he is, it's very much mirrors my own character.
That's such a far journey from threatening to buzz cut your hair if you don't ride the bicycle down the hill. You know what I mean? I mean, that's inspiring in some sense. Right? I mean, do you have a sense of hope that the world could be radically different soon around trans issues?
I do, but I'm also a very hopeful, optimistic person. So I think that if I just look at my own family's journey through this, specifically looking at me and my father's relationship, which is also very like a big theme and through line through it, is the crux of our conflict together is the fact that we both wanted each other to be someone else. I wanted him to be my mother. I wanted him to be caring and kind and warm and gentle, and he wanted me to be tough, like my brother Chad, who's a year younger than me, and he wanted me to be more masculine and kind of, you know, and I do have those qualities too. I am, I do, and I wouldn't call them masculine qualities. I would say that I'm very assertive and I'm very adamant and I'm very, out there, I guess. And so I think just looking at my own father's journey, I do feel hopeful because this was a man who knew nothing about these issues. And he has come to continue to love me, regardless of maybe the things that he doesn't understand, right? But his love of me and his care of me then enables him to transform himself, right? And I just think about my brother Chad, who just had a baby yesterday. After little Damien's in the world. And he finished reading the book and he started using terms like cisgendered.
Wow.
And he started using terms, and this is a football player, not trying to say that he's stereotypical or anything like that, but I don't go home and talk about gender issues with my family. I'm just Janet, who's a headache, who's a pain in the ass, And so just looking at my own family's evolution, I am hopeful. And I do think that part of that comes with learning other people's stories and hearing them unfiltered through the source instead of hearing it filtered through media and, all of these things that then can have a lot of loss of nuance.